this session is really to introduce you to some coaching styles. In the workshop later, there's an opportunity to practice, but what we'll be talking through today is really looking at the teaching style and spirit, and Eliseo is going to give some context around that and the aspirations. We're going to talk through what coaching actually is, and it would be useful to know in the room who's actually experienced coaching. Let me ask that now. Okay. Yes. Okay. And it's sometimes it's almost a natural kind of style to have, and certainly in leadership, but in terms of actual coaching and how you use that, not just with your trainees, but also with your patients, and in establishing that opportunity for your trainees to then be able to take that into a clinical setting. The skills required to be an effective coach, what some of the benefits are of coaching, looking at how this translates into health coaching, and this is something that's getting very popular in the NHS. There's a lot of national programs supporting clinicians in their leadership, but also in having the conversation with patients in terms of helping them take on more self-management and identifying their own goals rather than the goals we think they should have. And then how to sustain that, because there's a lot of demand on yourselves as teachers to help trainees and others to learn, but action learning sets are a way of peers and others in other networks to support one another and to support that, sustain that learning. So well, I'm hoping that we can cover this. I'm very conscious that Jose yesterday highlighted that you can have too much detail, and I was in a couple of sets where I know what irritates and what sends people to sleep, so hopefully that is not going to happen. So I'll hand over to, do you want me to do it?
I have mine.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, this probably works for certain, and I am not sure about this one. Okay, well, good morning. I'm Eliseo Pascual, I'm from Spain, and I will try to put in context on what subjects you need to coach or you need to support students. And indeed, leadership is a consequence of work well done and the opening of new ways when appreciated by others. Then people think, well, this is the one that is opening the way. Well, to show up in athletics, you have to be in the race, and so is true in medicine. And indeed, if we have to find a way of getting our trainees competing, or at least if those able to produce some new work, we should support them at the maximum to be shown the work, to show the work in congresses and meetings and so forth. An important thing, I think, in relation with leadership is where we set the horizon. Many see as the comfortable, this is up, this is a laser, no. Oh, this is a laser. Many see the comfortable short view and the beautiful trees and so forth, but a few others just see the mountains far away and beyond. And both the trainees, the trainers, and the units should share the horizon. And most important, if you are the trainers and you are in a unit, probably you are passing to your trainees the horizons of the unit, and if the unit has too short horizons, it will be difficult to get very good people looking very far away from this unit. If you want your trainees to fly, train people is to make them free and competent, then you also have to look far away and to pass them their vision. This Max Taylor, he got the Nobel Prize for developing the vaccine of yellow fever, and he used to say, we cannot educate a person, we can only create the proper atmosphere where he will educate himself. Yesterday, Jose insisted that we cannot teach those people not willing to learn. And this is obvious. If somebody doesn't want to listen, there's no way. Well, just a couple of slides, and I will pass the tools to her. Well, when the trainees arrive to our unit, they are full of hope and fear and incertitude, and that they try to hide. They look very happy, but they have diarrhea and things like that. And we should support them through all the process. It is the leader's role or the teacher's role to accompany the trainees through the whole process of learning. And accompany is to be permeable, to listen to them and see what are they fare, their inquietudes, where they want to go, etc. And try to not to conduct, but at least to modulate and to help them to avoid doubt. Well, the unit where the residents train, no doubt, is the platform from where they depart. And the bigger is the ambition of the unit, the bigger will be the ambition of the trainees. And the attitudes of the unit are determinant for the future of the trainees. That means if at the unit the practice is not good, for them the good practice will be the not good practice of their unit. And if at the unit they take shortcuts, they will learn to take shortcuts as the good practice, and so forth. Then one need of the units is to practice of excellence, but not, of course, for the patients, but very especially for the units. As a short comment, I work on gout, and I always diagnose gout, identifying crystals. Occasionally, if I am alone, and the disease is clear, I may say for myself, oh, this is gout, I have no doubt. But I never did that with a resident, working with a resident. No matter what time it was, I went, I got the fluid, and I went with him and looked at the fluid, and always said, you cannot diagnose gout, never, without looking at the crystals. Okay. And let's go to the next one. Well, the capacities on which we should coach, I guess, are some basic, which is interest, knowledge, and master the techniques, which are obvious, but higher practice requires curiosity and inquisitiveness, strength of drive, acquires self-confidence. This is very important because this depends very much on how they are treated at the unit and how the trainees treat them. And the treatment should be always warm. A persistent of the pursuit, of course, clarity of goals, and this changes along the process. Capacity for taking decisions that they should acquire very soon during the training, and certainly to become independent. We should try our trainees to be independent and to be self-functioning by themselves. And this is aided, of course, by clear reference, external rotation, and seeing the wider world, proper atmosphere to grow and finding the ways, enter the game, then communicating at congresses, and essentially feeling as one of the group. And the group is huge, not of the group of the unit, but of the group of all rheumatologists around, and including the top rheumatology. One thing is surprising when you are very young and begin coming is that you think that people with big names will be out of your reach, and they happen to be normal. They are not out of your reach. And it takes, mostly from people coming from some cultures, Spanish culture, for instance, may see the big names as somebody that cannot be reached, and they are normal, they are nice people. And I pass the microphone and the tools to Jan.
Thank you.
We will continue with the coaching thing.
Thank you. So what is coaching? What does it make you think of when someone says coaching? What springs to mind? Any thoughts? Asking?
Helping someone to learn a new skill.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So, first of all, I think for coaching it is about, there's lots of definitions of coaching, and this is taken from a context of coaching people to help them to improve their performance. And the first is really by Kaplan, which is around a collaborative partnership. So he works with the learner to help them achieve their goals, helps to problem solve, and to learn and develop. So this is really about sitting alongside somebody and collaborating. It's an art of facilitating. So it's not a telling, it's facilitating the development and learning in another. And then I think this one is the one that resonates with me most. It's about unlocking a person's potential so that they can maximise their performance. It's helping them to learn rather than actually teaching them what to do and how to do it. And I think that's what drives my passion for coaching, is that innate belief in somebody else's potential and believing that they have the answers, and it's about how you get them to become more aware so that they can take responsibility in achieving what they can. So here, these are some of the underlying principles of coaching. And the first is around building awareness and responsibility and self-belief in the individual. And that's the goal of the coach, really, is to help that person to become more aware and take that responsibility. To acknowledge that they're responsible for something, it follows then that they have the power and influence over it. So if there's a particular problem or a situation that they want to solve, by raising that awareness and responsibility, they have the power to act. And we see people in terms of their future potential, not necessarily on their past performance. So it's really looking at, again, this potential. So looking at into the future rather than the past. And really self-belief comes as we start to make decisions and we take successful actions, and then we recognise that we've been responsible for both of those, and we start to build our self-belief and confidence. I think this is really true, that our internal obstacles are more powerful sometimes than the external. So we impose some self-doubt and we have voices in our heads that inhibit our performance. And so coaching can help to kind of explore that and unlock that. And then I think the ultimate goal is that the coach's job is to ask the right questions, because the person that's in front of you has the answers, and it's about asking the questions to raise the self-awareness so that they can identify the answers. And it's a very powerful way to help people change and learn. And it's not a soft approach. It's actually quite a tough approach, because it's a balance of support and challenge. And it's about holding yourself accountable for your actions. So here are some of the coaching styles. So if we look at the directive style, the push, that's really about sort of teaching, training, giving people information. And as we go up the spectrum, we can see that it comes into sort of making suggestions, giving feedback. That's, I would say, sort of like a mentoring approach, when you're there to advise in a supportive way, or sometimes a challenging way. But as we get more to the non-directive, the pull, that's about reflecting and listening to understand. And that's kind of a more traditional coaching approach. So you resist giving advice and telling people, because sometimes there's someone in front of you, you think you know the answer, you know what they ought to do, but this is very much about helping them to find their own solutions. So the difference is, really, for a coach, you don't have to be an expert in the field, because the person in front of you is the expert in their field. You don't give advice unless you're asked, or you may sometimes say, can I just offer something here? So it's very much asking questions, and you don't need to be senior to the coachee. For a mentor, then you need significant experience in that field, and you will give advice because that person's coming to you, and it's most likely that you'll be more senior than actually the person in front of you. So just very quickly, and I know that we're really tight on time, so I'm not going to have time to go through all these slides, but just as a little experiment, to kind of get a feel for the difference between telling and a coaching style, if you can, and again, this is just a couple of minutes, think of something that you would like to change. Something for you. It may be you want to do more exercise, maybe drink less, smoke less, something very sort of light-hearted. And I want you to turn to the person next to you, and I want the person next to you to give you the very best advice. So it's not about asking questions, you're just going to tell that person what they need to do to make that change. And don't give them time to think, just tell them, okay? And then to swap round. So it could be anything. So just bear with me, just play this little game now. So it's think of something that you want to change, make it up if you want to, and the person next to you is going to tell you what to do. You've got a minute to do that, swap round, and then tell the other person what you want to do. Okay, so can I just ask, how did that feel to be told what to do? Give advice? Did you get the right advice? You got the right advice, okay. Well done. I just wondered how it felt, because quite often when you're in a situation where it's telling, you tell someone what to do, and the sort of the natural response is sometimes to resist a bit. So if someone insists on something, sometimes you resist that. And maybe you don't feel that you're being listened to properly because someone's just carrying on telling you about the right advice. You won't necessarily take responsibility for that action because it's not come from you. So just very quickly, same situation, same issue. I want you to get back into your pairs, and this time I'd like you to ask some questions. So you want to make a change, so ask that person what they want to achieve from making that change. What choices do they have? What might be a good step? So actually start to listen to the person, what they want to change, and just ask some questions around what will success look like? What's going to be different when you've made that change? Okay, so really quickly, a couple of minutes, same issue, different approach. Off you go. Okay, so this is just a little experiment. So I'm going to stop you, even though you may not have decided what the success looks like, but there's an opportunity in the workshop to have a proper conversation, coaching conversation. So how different was that? Oh, okay. You didn't need to put the effort in the first place. Okay. It was the wrong thing. Okay. Energy levels any different? More dialogue. Okay. A bit more conversation. Okay, so very much sort of the deciding for myself is that sense of taking ownership and therefore more probably willingness to actually make the change in the end. And feeling a bit more empowered. So it's just a little exercise to kind of like test out the difference. But in terms of the skills, fundamental skills required for coaching, I think what's really very important is the beliefs we operate from. So there is something about genuinely believing in the person's potential that's sitting in front of you or that you're having the conversation with. And being non-judgmental. I think if you judge what someone's coming to you with or you think that you know the answer, actually it doesn't become a coaching conversation. It could be a mentoring conversation or just telling someone. So the belief that people have the capacity to change and the capacity to transform is very important. Building rapport and relationship in a coaching relationship is very important. So that trust and the sense that you're being listened to is pretty key. So, and there are different levels of listening. There's sort of paying someone a bit of attention, and there's a real focus of attention on that person. And when you're really being listened to, you really know. It's also having that opportunity to have a space to reflect and to think in an uninterrupted space. And very often in daily life, it's not very often, especially at work, when you have time to just step back and reflect because you're so busy thinking and doing and being active. So it's an opportunity to reflect. Asking effective questions, and that is really by following the interest of the person in front of you. Enables you to ask open questions rather than closed questions. Closed questions give you a yes or no answer, whereas you want to open up the conversation, so by asking the hows, the whats, the whens, what ifs, what else, that actually helps to open up the conversation. Reflecting and summarising, just by repeating back what someone's just told you does help to raise awareness, because sometimes it might be the first time that person's articulated what's in their head, and they say it out loud, and when you say it back to them, it can sort of raise awareness. They hear it almost for the first time. And giving constructive feedback, that came up yesterday as well, around noticing what's happening. And sometimes it might be noticing someone's body language or their energy, as well as what they've done or what they're saying. So actually giving feedback is key. So levels of listening, again, there's different levels of listening, and cosmetic listening is just really just about being there. And it looks like I'm listening, but I'm really some kind of place else. So your thoughts, you've got loads of thoughts in your head. You're not really listening, you're there. You're thinking about the next thing that you've got to do or that email that you've got to send. You're engaged in conversation, you're talking, and it is a conversation. So you're just kind of having a chit-chat, really, but you're thinking a lot. So therefore, if you're thinking a lot, you're not got the capacity to listen what the other person's saying. The next is active listening, and that's very focused on what someone's saying, and you're really paying attention. And you may be recording some facts. And then deep listening. And that's really about getting a sense of who that person is, and sometimes about what they're not saying, because maybe what you're picking up is actually doesn't really ring true. It feels counterintuitive. And then the structure of a conversation, and it's useful to have a structure, because otherwise it becomes a bit of maybe a storytelling, or it's good to have an outcome in mind. So this is a model that was developed by Sir John Whitmore, and it's a very simple model, and it's called the GROW model. And it starts with helping the person to identify a goal, because what you want to know is what's the purpose of this conversation or this meeting, because you can use coaching in meetings, you can use it in lots of different settings, but what would be a successful outcome from this conversation? What do you want to get out of it? And sometimes you have to have a conversation to help that person know what it is they want to achieve. But having that goal helps you to keep the conversation on track. So you help support that structure to enable the other person to explore. So the reality is the R, and that's really checking in. What's the reality? So the person comes with an issue, so you want to check out what the reality of that is, because they may be coming with lots of assumptions that other people are thinking about them, but you want to check the reality of what that situation is. And then options. And this is where you get to ask lots of open-ended questions to help them explore what are their options, because they're the expert on the situation and the issue. So it's actually helping them explore all the opportunities and options and routes that they could take to solve it. And then it's really important that it finishes with some action, to go away and to practice something or do something different or have a go. So there's the W is about a willingness to act, which is what will you do, when will you do it, and by when. So this is some of the benefits, and I'm very conscious that I've got too much content in my presentation, so we're going to run out of time. But these are some of the benefits, and a lot of it's around awareness and of someone's motivations. It's trying to improve their personal effectiveness, better equipped to solve their own problems. And I think by the belief in that person that they've got the answers to the solutions and problems really helps to improve their self-confidence, especially in their role. And it's used very much when people are stepping into a more senior role, because it's a bit of an unknown. So it's about helping them to develop some confidence and some more strategies and skills to manage that wider role. And also maybe to help them to, if they've come to a crossroads, help them to make some career decisions about what's important for them So again, it's about feeling a greater sense of engagement and well-being at work. I was going to go into how this can translate into the patient setting, and I might just really quickly, if that's all right with you, just skip through some of these. But it's really about, so this is something that's been pulled together for Health Education East of England, and I'll just let you have a read of that. And I guess that's about identifying who's taking responsibility for what. So, and health coaching in a clinical setting is really, you replace the sort of performance with around improving self-management. And coaching in this setting is really supporting someone to change their relationship to a problem or challenge and their health challenge. And it's really about, again, this partnership, collaborative approach with patients in settings. And it's about who's the expert. You're the expert on the condition, but I'm an expert on me and what I need. So it combines, obviously, your consulting skills and your clinical skills and behavioural science and what helps to support behavioural change. But it also takes some of the skills and fundamentals from coaching and you put them all together in support of helping patients to identify goals and becoming more active in their own treatment and management and some decision making. So I'm just going to race through this. I know that there was some interest in change and transition. And I think when you are changing something or even trying something new, the change is external and you might see incremental change and you know where you're heading and you know that the ways will be different and external things will change, but transition happens on the inside. And with any kind of change, you always have to be cognizant of the transition and what's happening internally, because it takes longer for that to happen, and it very often starts with a letting go or a loss. So transition will result in a lot of change in emotions, and you may see that in people that you work with. If things are changing in your department, you know the actual physical changes happen, but you don't sometimes recognise what are all these different changes in behaviours that happen, and this is it's a transition curve, and there isn't time to probably go through it all, but these slides are available, and it's actually might be quite useful to recognise some of these, which is the kind of, I guess, the Kubler-Ross loss curve, but it's also about, these are some of the internal things that happen to all of us when we go through change, especially if it's change that we're uncertain about and we're not sure, what's going to be the outcome. And then just very quickly, I'll mention action learning sets, because this is a way of using peer support and connecting people, not necessarily in the same department, but across your organisations or regions or the EULAR network, maybe, in sharing learning. And it is about, again, people being able to come with a problem or issue and to be in a group where questions are asked and conversations are happened, when there's a relevant balance of support and challenge within the group to help that person to then take action. And it's an opportunity for people to learn from others, and maybe from a peer point of view. So that was the last bit was a real quick run through, but I think there's something about the coaching skills and health coaching and action learning sets, and developing some skills in facilitating self-awareness, confidence and responsibility. And I think they're the three areas, the awareness, confidence and responsibility, that coaching can help to support. And then maybe in the workshop, we'll be looking at how it's possible to maybe incorporate some of these new skills into current and future practice, and then what support or ongoing resources would be required to help sustain that interest. So, thank you. That's that.